Hello fellow time travelers. Tonight we are going on a time-traveling safari into the wild heart of the Roman Empire, where forgotten beasts roam under a blood-orange sun. Picture yourself standing on a dusty plain, the air thick with the scent of olive groves and the distant clang of legionary swords. You're not in some sanitized museum. You're here, in a world where massive horns glint in the haze and roars echo from arena pits. These animals, now extinct, shaped Rome's glory and grit, and you're about to meet them up close. And remember, when we get back I'll have a special tale from Roman mythology waiting just for you. That is if you aren't already sound asleep. Don't worry, even if you doze off, I'll still tell the tale. So, before we start and you drift off to sleep, take a moment to like this video, subscribe, and ring that bell so you'll always know when we are off to a new time-traveling adventure together. In return, I promise to stand out by offering you the most interesting and valuable content guaranteed to help you drift off to a peaceful sound sleep. Drop a comment with your city and local time. I'd love to know where you're joining us from. Now, turn off the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's time-traveling journey together. You start your journey in the year 100 AD, somewhere in the sprawling provinces of the Roman Empire. The ground vibrates under your feet, not from chariots but from creatures that no modern zoo could hold. These aren't the lions or elephants you might picture from a safari brochure. These are the forgotten, the extinct beasts that awed emperors, terrified soldiers, and fed the empire's endless hunger for spectacle. Some hauled supplies, others bled in the Colosseum, and a few scurried unnoticed through the underbrush. Historians still debate whether Rome's relentless expansion helped doom these species, but one thing's clear: their stories are etched into the empire's bones. First, imagine the sheer variety. The Roman world stretched from Britain's foggy moors to Egypt's sun-scorched sands, and its wildlife was just as diverse. You're not just dodging wolves or bears here. You're in a land where massive cattle like aurochs thundered across plains, where pint-sized elephants shuffled on distant islands, and where birds too heavy to fly waddled along trade routes. Romans loved their animals. Well, loved using them. They paraded them in triumphs, pitted them against gladiators, or ground their bones into medicine. Fun fact: Roman doctors once prescribed crocodile dung as a sunscreen. Bet you're glad for SPF 50 now. Let's set the scene wider. You're trudging through a marketplace in Rome itself, the forum buzzing like a modern mall on Black Friday. Cages line the stalls, stuffed with creatures from every corner of the empire. A merchant hawks a snarling Barbary lion, its manner matted from the long ship ride from North Africa. Nearby, a Syrian wild ass brays, kicking at its ropes. These animals weren't just goods, they were symbols of Rome's reach. Conquering a land meant claiming its beasts, too. Emperors like Augustus flaunted exotic creatures to flex their power, and the crowds ate it up. Ever wonder what a Roman Instagram would look like? Probably a lot of lion selfies and zero filters. But not all these creatures were stars. Some, like the tiny Balearic giant shrew, lived far from Rome's marble temples, scurrying through island grasses while the empire churned. Others, like the tarpan horse, galloped free until Roman reins tried to bind them. Each had a role, big or small, in the empire's story. And each vanished, leaving only bones, myths, or a stray mention in Pliny the Elder's scrolls. Why'd they go? Overhunting, habitat loss, or just bad luck? Take your pick. Romans weren't exactly big on conservation. Joke's on them. They couldn't Google extinction to see what was coming. As you weave through this mental menagerie, you feel the weight of time. These creatures aren't just gone, they're forgotten, their roars and hoofbeats drowned out by history's noise. Yet here you are, dusting off their tracks. You're not just a tourist, you're a witness. By the time we're done, you'll have met 15 of these lost souls, from the mighty aurochs to a duck that never quacked. Each section ahead will pull you deeper into their world, no map required. So, take a breath, let the fan hum, and keep your eyes peeled. The Roman wilds are calling, and they're anything but tame. Our next stop on this extraordinary safari is the year 50 AD. You appear and begin trudging across a windswept plain in Gaul, with grass tickling your shins and a faint musk in the air. The Roman Empire's grip is tightening here, but the land still feels wild, untamed. Ahead, a shadow looms, massive, horned, and snorting like a steam engine. This is no mere cow. You've stumbled into the path of an aurochs, the colossal bovine that makes modern cattle look like plush toys. Its shoulders hump like a mountain ridge, and its eyes lock onto you, daring you to move. Good luck outrunning this beast. It's built like a tank with a bad attitude. The aurochs, or Bos primigenius, was a titan of the ancient world, standing up to 6 feet at the shoulder with horns that could skewer a chariot. Romans knew it well, soldiers hunted it for sport, and farmers cursed its raids on their fields. Julius Caesar himself wrote about these beasts in his Gallic war commentaries, describing them as a little below the elephant in size and untamable. Exaggeration? Maybe, but when you're staring down a 2-ton bull, you don't argue semantics. These creatures roamed from Europe to Asia, thriving in forests and plains until Rome's sprawl began carving up their turf. Picture yourself crouching in the underbrush, watching a hunt. Roman auxiliaries, armed with spears and bravado, circle the aurochs. It's not just meat they're after, its hide makes shields, its horns become drinking cups, and its legend fuels campfire tales. The aurochs was a symbol of raw power, and Romans loved bending nature to their will. But here's a quirky tidbit. Some Roman chefs feast on aurochs fat as a delicacy, slathering it on bread like ancient butter. But that's not on your keto diet. You notice the ground is scarred with hoof prints, each the size of a dinner plate. The aurochs didn't just survive, it dominated. Its herds shaped the landscape, grazing meadows into existence and fertilizing soil with, well, let's call it natural compost. Historians still wonder how much Rome's hunger for land and glory pushed the aurochs toward extinction. By the empire's twilight, their numbers dwindled as forests fell to farmland and villas. The last aurochs died in Poland in 1627 AD, but Rome's blades took their toll centuries earlier. Now, imagine the sound, a deep bellow that rattles your ribs. The aurochs charges, and you dive behind a tree, heart pounding. This isn't the Colosseum, this is the wild, where humans aren't always the apex predator. You catch a glimpse of its flank, dappled with sweat and scars, a living monument to a world Rome couldn't fully tame. Joke's on you if you thought a toga would impress this guy, he'd rather gore it than wear it. As the beast vanishes into the haze, you realize something. The aurochs wasn't just an animal, it was a challenge. Romans hunted it to prove their might, but every skull they mounted was a step toward its end. You brush dirt off your tunic, wondering if the crowd in Rome ever cheered for the beast instead of the hunter. Probably not, they were too busy betting on the next spectacle. Speaking of which, ready to meet a real arena star? Dust yourself off. The Barbary lion's waiting, and it's not here to purr. In a flash you're in the year 75 AD, standing in the Roman Colosseum's shadow, the air thick with sweat, sand, and the metallic tang of blood. The crowd's roar hits you like a wave, chanting for the next spectacle. Below, in the arena's pit, a beast paces, a Barbary lion, its tawny menere flaring like a dark sun. Its eyes glint with defiance, and its growl rumbles through your bones. This isn't your average big cat. This is the king of North Africa's vanished pride, a gladiatorial superstar whose roar once echoed from Morocco to Egypt. The Barbary lion, Panthera leo, was a heavyweight, with males tipping scales at 600 pounds and stretching 10 feet nose to tail. Romans were obsessed, shipping thousands from their African provinces for Venetians, staged hunts in arenas. Emperor Augustus alone boasted of slaughtering 3,500 beasts, lions included, for public games. You're watching one now, its muscles rippling as it eyes a gladiator clutching a flimsy spear. Spoiler, that guy's not getting a victory wreath. Historians agree these lions were bigger than their modern cousins, with darker, thicker manes, perfect for terrifying crowds and boosting an emperor's ego. Imagine slipping into the Hypogeum, the Colosseum's underbelly, where cages rattle with snarls. The lion's menere is matted, its ribs sharp from the long voyage across the Mediterranean. Romans didn't care about animal welfare, lions were props, not pets. Yet, here's a zany detail. Some Romans believed lion fat cured epilepsy, rubbing it on like magical lotion. Good luck convincing this beast to donate a sample. You dodge a handler's whip and climb back to the stands, the crowd's cheers drowning out your thoughts. The lion charges, sand flying, and the gladiator stumbles. You wince, but the crowd howls for more. These lions weren't just arena fodder, they symbolized Rome's conquest over nature. Every kill was a flex, proof the empire could tame the wild. But the cost? North Africa's lion prides dwindled as Rome's demand grew. By the early 20th century AD, the Barbary lion was extinct, its last survivors shot by colonial hunters. Rome's arenas didn't help, bleeding the species dry for applause. You notice the lion's paws, each the size of a skillet, leaving deep prints in the sand. It pauses, staring into the stands, and for a second, you swear it sees you. Your heart skips, jokes on you if you thought a cheap seat was safe. The beast's menere catches the sunlight, a fleeting crown before the inevitable. You wonder what it felt like to roam free, hunting antelope under a desert moon, not trapped in this stone circus. Romans called these fights entertainment, you're starting to call it a tragedy. As the lion lunges again, you turn away, the crowd's frenzy fading to a hum. The Barbary lion story isn't just about blood and sand, it's about a world that chewed up its wonders. You slip out of the Colosseum, the beast's final roar chasing you into the streets. Time to move east, where another feline prowls, quieter but no less fierce. Keep your sandals laced, the Caspian tiger's stripes are calling. Suddenly, you find yourself creeping through a reed-choked marsh on the empire's eastern edge, near the Caspian Sea, in 125 AD. The air is damp, heavy with the scent of mud and wild mint, and a faint rustle makes your pulse spike. Something moves in the shadows, a flash of orange, black stripes slicing through the gloom. You freeze. This is the Caspian tiger, a phantom of Rome's frontier, its amber eyes pinning you like a spear. This beast doesn't need an arena to prove its power, it rules these wilds. The Caspian tiger, Panthera tigris virgata, was a sleek predator, stretching up to 10 feet and weighing 400 pounds. Its range spanned the empire's eastern provinces, think modern Iran, Turkey, and Central Asia, where it hunted deer and boar in dense thickets. Romans rarely saw it in the Colosseum. This cat was too elusive, its habitat too far from Rome's grasp. Still, traders whispered of its ferocity, and legionaries stationed in Parthia swapped tales of striped ghosts in the night. Historical records, like those from Pliny the Elder, mention tigers in these regions, though Romans often confused them with leopards. Easy mistake when you're running for your life. Picture yourself edging closer, reeds brushing your tunic. The tiger's stripes blend with the dappled light, making it seem half-spirit. You're not here to hunt. Good thing, since your dagger's more decorative than deadly. Locals revered this beast, weaving it into myths as a guardian of the wild. But Rome's expansion didn't care for legends. As forts rose and forests fell, the tiger's prey dwindled. By the 20th century AD, habitat loss and Russian hunters wiped it out, the last Caspian tiger spotted in the 1970s. Rome's footprint started that slow bleed. Here's an outlandish trivia question. What did Romans think tiger claws could do? Answer: ward off evil spirits if worn as amulets. You glance at the tiger's paws, each claw a curved dagger, and decide you're not testing that theory. Joke's on anyone who tried prying one off this cat. You crouch lower, hoping the tiger doesn't fancy you as lunch. Its tail flicks, and you notice its coat, thicker than an African lion's, built for chilly winters. This wasn't just a predator, it was a survivor, until Rome's sprawl and later empires tipped the scales. You hear a splash, a boar bolts from the marsh, and the tiger's gone in a blur, muscles rippling like water. You exhale, legs shaky, and realize you're alone again. The silence feels heavier now, as if the tiger took the marsh's pulse with it. Historians still debate whether Rome's eastern campaigns directly harmed the Caspian tiger, but clearing land for vineyards and roads didn't exactly roll out the welcome mat. You wipe sweat from your brow, wondering how something so fierce could vanish. As you back away, the marsh swallowing your footprints, you feel the weight of what's lost. The Caspian tiger didn't need Rome's applause, it thrived in the shadows. But shadows shrink when empires grow. You turn west, toward dustier trails, where a different beast waits. Keep your eyes sharp, the Syrian wild ass doesn't stand still. You've just arrived in Syria, 150 AD, the horizon shimmering like a fever dream. Hooves clatter ahead, and you spot it, a Syrian wild ass, all lean muscle and stubborn grit, darting across the scrubland. Its grey coat blends with the rocks, but its black-tipped ears twitch, catching your every step. This isn't some plodding farm donkey. It's a speedster, built for deserts, and it's eyeing you like you're the one who doesn't belong. Spoiler, you don't. The Syrian wild ass, or Equus hemionus hemippus, was a wiry marvel, standing about 4 feet tall and weighing barely 400 pounds. Romans called it onager and used it as a beast of burden, hauling grain or pulling carts across the eastern provinces. Think of it as the empire's delivery truck, but with a temper and a kick that could dent a shield. Historical texts, like those from Strabo, note its abundance in Syria and Mesopotamia, where it roamed in herds, dodging lions and outrunning wolves. But Rome's love for taming the wild had a cost. By the early 20th century AD, overhunting and habitat loss erased this ass from the earth, its last wild herds gone by 1927. Imagine you're a Roman merchant, your cart creaking under amphorae of wine. The ass in front brays, refusing to budge. You curse, but you're impressed. This beast's got more spine than half the legionaries you've met. Romans prized its stamina, but they also hunted it for sport, chasing it with dogs or trapping it for arenas. You glance at the ass, its tail swatting flies, and wonder how things would be today if the Romans had more common sense. You notice its hooves, chipped but tough, carving trails through the stony ground. This creature wasn't just a worker, it shaped the land, grazing sparse grasses and spreading seeds in its deposits. Historians still debate whether Roman demand for pack animals pushed the Syrian wild ass toward extinction, but turning deserts into farmland didn't help. Every road you walk, every field you pass, was a nail in its coffin. You try to keep pace as it trots ahead, its legs a blur. Joke's on you if you thought you could outwalk a desert Ferrari. The ass pauses, sniffing the air, and you catch your breath. Its eyes are sharp, wary, like it knows the empire's closing in. You wonder what it'd say if it could talk, probably something about Romans needing to chill with the whips. In the distance, a legionary outpost glints, all stone walls and watchtowers. The ass bolts, kicking up a dust cloud that stings your eyes. You're left coughing, alone, with just the echo of its hooves. This beast didn't need Rome's approval to thrive, but it couldn't outrun the empire's sprawl. As you wipe grit from your face, you think back to the Aurochs' thundering charge or the Barbary lion's arena roar. The Syrian wild ass is quieter, humbler, but no less vital. It carried Rome's goods, fed its armies, and still vanished without a statue or a saga. You turn toward the horizon, where bigger shadows loom. Something massive waits across the sea, and it's not here to haul your luggage. Time to move. The North African elephant's trumpet is calling. Did you ever dream you'd be on a creaking ship off Carthage's coast, 200 AD, the sea salt crusting your lips and the African sun scorching your neck? Well, now you are, as a low rumble shakes the deck, not thunder, but a living mountain chained below. You peer into the hold, and there it is, a North African elephant, its grey bulk swaying with the waves, tusks glinting like curved swords. Its trunk curls, and one small, wise eye meets yours. This isn't Hannibal's war beast of legend. This is a forgotten giant, Rome's ultimate flex, and it's not thrilled to be your cargo. The North African elephant, likely Loxodonta africana ferohensis, was smaller than its savanna cousins, standing about 8 feet tall and weighing up to 4 tons. Romans adored it, not for zoos but for spectacle, parading it in triumphs or pitting it against gladiators in the arena. Historical accounts, like those from Polybius, describe elephants in Carthage's armies crossing the Alps, but by Rome's imperial peak, these beasts were more circus props than soldiers. They roamed North Africa's forests and scrublands until Roman demand and habitat loss pushed them to extinction, likely by the 4th century AD. Picture yourself at a Roman triumph, the streets of Rome choked with cheering crowds. The elephant lumbers past, draped in crimson cloth, its ears flapping like sails. You're close enough to smell its musky hide and feel the ground shake. Romans didn't just parade these beasts, they mythologized them. Emperors like Pompey tried riding elephant-drawn chariots, though, fun fact, the axles usually snapped. Jokes on him for thinking 4 tons plays nice with wood. You dodge a pile of dung the size of a shield, wondering if that's the real reason Rome paved its roads. The elephant's trunk sways, probing the air, and you notice scars crisscrossing its hide, souvenirs from nets and spears. These creatures weren't bred for captivity, they were wild, ripped from their herds to amuse the masses. Historians still wonder how many died in transit, crammed in ships or marched across deserts. You're back on the boat now, the beast's weight tilting the deck. A sailor mutters about bad omens, and you can't blame him. One wrong step, and you're swimming with the sharks and sleeping with the fishes. You imagine its home, North Africa's lush forests, not yet raised for Rome's grain fields. There, it felled trees, carved paths, and led herds with a quiet wisdom. Rome saw only muscle and ivory, not an ecosystem's architect. As the ship docks, you hear the elephant's trumpet, a sound that rattles your ribs and haunts the docks. The crowd onshore roars, eager for their show. You step onto the pier, the beast's gaze lingering like a warning. It's not just a captive, it's a ghost of a world Rome's eating alive. You turn north, where older shadows stalk. The African sun fades, and a chill creeps in. Something ancient waits, its paw prints etched in legend. Keep your cloak tight, the European cave lion's prowling, and it doesn't care for Rome's applause. And just like that, you find yourself shivering in a misty forest in Germania, 50 BC, the moonlight barely piercing the canopy of gnarled oaks. Twigs snap underfoot, and a low growl freezes you mid-step. Eyes glow from the shadows, pale, unblinking, like twin lanterns in the fog. This is no Barbary lion shipped for Rome's arenas. You've stumbled into the haunt of the European cave lion, a prehistoric predator whose bones whisper of a world before the empire's banners. Its massive frame, nearly 12 feet long, looms closer, and you realize you're not the hunter here. The European cave lion, Panthera leospalea, was a relic of the Ice Age, surviving into the early historical era. It roamed Europe's forests and plains, from Britain to the Black Sea, its thick fur suited for cold snaps that would have sent Romans scurrying for their cloaks. Unlike the Barbary lion, it rarely saw the Colosseum, too wild, too northern, but its legend lingered in tribal tales and early Roman accounts. Cave art from Lascaux, dated to 15,000 BC, shows its broad head and shaggy menere, and some scholars believe it haunted the edges of Roman expansion. By the time Rome rose, it was likely extinct, vanishing around 10,000 BC, though myths kept its roar alive. Imagine you're a Roman scout, your legion carving a road through these woods. You find a massive skull, its fangs like daggers, and whisper prayers to Mars. The locals call it a cave beast, claiming it hunts men who stray too far. You're not buying the myth, but the paw prints you spot, wider than your shield, make you rethink. Here's an oddball fact. Some Romans thought lion teeth, ground to powder, boosted courage. You clutch your dagger, wishing you'd packed some of that dust. Joke's on you if you think a blade's enough against this monster. The lion steps into a moonlit clearing, its breath steaming in the chill. You notice its size, bigger than any African lion, with a menere sparse but wild, like a storm cloud. Historians can't agree on why it vanished: climate shifts, human hunters, or shrinking prey like the aurochs. Rome's arrival didn't help, turning forests into fields and driving off game. You crouch behind a boulder, heart hammering, as the lion sniffs the air. Its roar, when it comes, is a bone-rattling bellow, like thunder trapped in a cave. But the Caspian tiger would have slunk away from this guy. You're struck by its solitude. Unlike modern lions, cave lions might have hunted alone, stalking silently through snow or shadow. This one's a ghost, a holdover from a world of ice and giants, out of place in Rome's tidy maps. You wonder if the tribes revered it, carving its likeness into totems while Romans built forts over its graves. The lion turns, vanishing into the trees, and you're left with just the wind and your pounding pulse. It's gone, but its weight lingers, a reminder of what Rome's roads erased. You stumble back to camp, the forest swallowing your tracks. The cave lion's roar fades, but another world beckons, one smaller, stranger. Time to shrink down and sail south, where tiny terrors rule. Grab your sandals, the Balearic giant shrew's waiting, and it's not as cute as it sounds. The next jump across time puts us on a rocky hillside in the Balearic Islands, 100 BC, the Mediterranean sun baking your shoulders and the scent of thyme tickling your nose. The ground twitches beneath you, not an earthquake, but a scurry of tiny claws. You squint and spot it, a Balearic giant shrew, no bigger than your thumb, darting between stones like a furry bullet. Its needle-sharp snout twitches, and its beady eyes size you up. Don't laugh, this pint-sized terror ruled these islands long before Rome's galleys arrived, and it's not here to make friends. The Balearic giant shrew, likely a species of Nigetites, was a paradoxical marvel, a shrew, but oversized for its kind, stretching up to 5 inches with a tail like a whip. These islands, Mallorca, Menorca, were evolutionary playgrounds where isolation turned small creatures massive and big ones tiny. The shrew thrived here, gobbling insects and lizards with teeth that could pierce leather. Roman settlers, arriving around 123 BC, barely noticed it, too busy building villas. But their goats and rats did, trampling its burrows and stealing its prey. By the time Rome fell, the shrew was gone, extinct around 2000 BC, though some argue it clung on longer. Picture yourself as a Roman farmer, scratching out a living on this rocky isle. You're cursing the thin soil when something nips your sandal, a shrew, bold as a gladiator, after your lunch crumbs. You jump, then chuckle, but this critter's no joke. Its bite, laced with mild venom, stings like a bee. Here's a zany detail. Islanders thought shrews were bad omens, blaming them for sour wine or lost nets. You shoo it away, but it skitters back, fearless. Joke's on you for thinking size equals strength. You follow its trail, weaving through scrub and stone. Its burrows, barely wider than a coin, honeycomb the ground, proof it was no loner but a colony dweller, shaping the island's ecosystem. Historians still debate whether Roman farming alone doomed the shrew or if climate shifts helped. Either way, their ships brought rats, and those furry invaders outcompeted the locals. You spot a shrew wrestling a beetle, its jaws snapping like tiny shears. This was no cuddly pet, it was a predator in miniature, ruling a world Rome barely saw. The shrew vanishes into a crevice, and you're left with the hum of cicadas and a strange respect. It wasn't mighty like the aurochs or fierce like the Barbary lion, but it held its ground. You imagine its kind scurrying under Roman sandals, unnoticed until they were gone. The island feels emptier now, its small ghosts louder than you'd expect. You stand, brushing dirt from your tunic, and turn toward another island's hills. Something else is hiding, softer but just as lost. Keep low, the Sardinian pike's burrows are next, and they're trickier than they look. When you're a time travelers, you get to see what others only can read about, like where you appear next. A rocky slope on Sardinia, 75 BC, the air sharp with the scent of wild rosemary and the distant crash of waves. Your foot slips into a hidden burrow, and you stifle a curse. This island's full of them, dug by a creature you'd mistake for a rabbit if it weren't so off. There it is, nibbling a tuft of grass. A Sardinian piker, round-eared and tailless, its big eyes blinking at you like you're the weird one. This furry oddball, no bigger than a fist, is no petting zoo star, but it's a survivor of a world Rome's sandals are trampling. The Sardinian piker, Prolagus sardus, was a lagomorph, cousin to rabbits but quirkier, thriving in Sardinia's hills and scrublands. Unlike the Balearic shrew, it wasn't venomous or fierce, just a vegetarian scamp, dodging foxes and hawks. Romans, who conquered Sardinia by 238 BC, barely mentioned it, though their farmers griped about nibbled crops. Its fossils show it lasted until the early Middle Ages, but Roman land clearing and introduced predators like cats sped its end, likely by 800 AD. Those burrows you're tripping over? They aerated soil and spread seeds, making this piker a tiny gardener of an island Rome reshaped. Imagine you're a shepherd, your flock grazing nearby. You spot the piker darting into its burrow, quick as a coin flip. You're tempted to dig it out. Locals roast them when times are lean, but it's gone before you blink. Here's an outlandish trivia question. What did some Sardinians think piker fur cured? Answer: baldness, if woven into a cap. You pat your head, grinning, and decide to skip that remedy. Joke's on them, no caps saving Emperor Nero's hairline. You kneel by the burrow, marveling at its maze-like tunnels, some deep enough to hide a wineskin. The piker pops out again, whiskers twitching, and you notice its teeth, ever-growing like a beaver's, perfect for gnawing tough plants. Historians can't agree on how much Rome's sprawl hurt the piker. Was it the plows, the cats, or both? Either way, every vineyard carved into these hills stole a bit of its home. You watch it hop, not bounce, its movements oddly grounded for a creature so spry. It's no aurochs or cave lion, but its quiet hustle feels just as vital. Bet it'd outsmart that Syrian wild ass in a race to hide. You sit back, the sun dipping low, painting the hills gold. The piker vanishes, leaving only a faint rustle. You're struck by how small things endure, unnoticed, until they don't. Rome's busy building ports and temples, but this creature's world is older, softer, slipping away under their chisels. You dust off your tunic, the sea breeze cooling your skin. Another island calls, with a beast even stranger. Time to sail south. The Sicilian dwarf elephant's waiting, and it's got a trunk full of surprises. As our time-jumping safari continues, you suddenly find yourself wading through knee-high grass on a Sicilian hillside, 50 BC, the Mediterranean breeze carrying the tang of salt and wildflowers. A rustle parts the stalks, and you freeze, expecting a snake. Instead, a tiny trunk pokes out, followed by a creature no taller than a goat, an elephant, but comically small, its floppy ears and bright eyes giving it a storybook charm. This is the Sicilian dwarf elephant, a pocket-sized marvel that roams an island Rome's just starting to claim. It snuffles your sandal, and you stifle a laugh. This beast is no war machine, but it's stealing your heart. The Sicilian dwarf elephant, likely Paleoloxodon falconeri, was a miniature marvel, standing barely 4 feet tall and weighing about 300 pounds. Descended from full-sized elephants, it shrank over millennia on Sicily's isolated shores, a textbook case of island dwarfism. Romans, expanding here after the Punic Wars by 264 BC, might have glimpsed it, though written records are scarce. Its fossils, found in caves, suggest it survived until around 4000 BC, but Roman settlers' fires and farms likely hastened its end. Picture yourself as a Roman surveyor, mapping Sicily for new villas. You spot the elephant munching shrubs, its trunk curling like a question mark. You're tempted to pet it, bad idea, that trunk strong enough to yank your arm off. Here's a quirky tidbit. Locals thought its bones were cyclops skulls, the eye socket mistaken for a single giant orb. You grin, imagining a cyclops with a trunk. Joke's on them, no monster here, just a tiny titan. You watch it amble, its stubby legs surprisingly nimble, leaving prints no bigger than a bread loaf. Its smallness is deceptive. This elephant shaped Sicily's ecosystem, clearing paths and spreading seeds with every deposit. Historians still wonder how fast Rome's arrival tipped its fate. Did settlers hunt it, or did their goats outgraze it? Either way, the island's forest shrank, and so did its world. You kneel, noticing its tusks, more like overgrown toothpicks than the North African spears. It trumpets, a high-pitched toot that's more adorable than alarming. Bet it'd give that Balearic shrew a run for its money in a cuteness contest. You follow it to a stream, where it splashes like a kid in a puddle. The scene feels timeless, but Rome's ships are docking, bringing plows and predators. You wonder if this elephant knows its days are numbered, or if it just lives, moment to moment, under Sicily's sun. It wanders off, vanishing into the grass, and you're left with a pang. This wasn't a beast of empire, just a survivor, now a ghost. You turn toward distant shores, where another oddity waits. Time to sail far, the Rodriguez Solitaire's calling, and it's got wings it can't use. Be careful where you step, For our next adventure we need to land on a jagged cliff on Rodriguez Island, far from Rome's marble heart, in 250 AD. The Indian Ocean crashes below, and the air smells of salt and guano. A clumsy flapping catches your ear, not a seagull, but a Rodriguez solitaire, a flightless bird waddling through the scrub like a feathered philosopher. Its beak, curved like a smirk, pecks at a fruit, and its knobby wings flap uselessly. This odd creature, tied to Rome's distant trade routes, looks like it wandered out of a fable, and it's sizing you up like you're the punchline. The Rodriguez solitaire, Pisiphaps solitaria, was a cousin to the dodo, thriving on this remote island east of Mauritius. About 3 feet tall, it weighed as much as a toddler and shuffled on sturdy legs, munching fruits and seeds. Rome's empire didn't reach here directly, but its trade networks did, with merchants sailing to India and beyond, swapping tales of strange beasts. Roman naturalist Pliny the Elder might have heard of such birds, though he'd likely call it a winged oddity. The solitaire survived until the 18th century AD, when European sailors hunted it to extinction, but Rome's far-flung commerce set the stage for its discovery and doom. Imagine you're a Roman sailor, your ship anchored after a spice run. You trek inland and spot the solitaire, its grey feathers ruffled by the breeze. It doesn't flee, just stares, bold as a senator. You're tempted to catch it, dinner or bragging rights, but its beak snaps like a warning. Here's an oddball fact. Islanders thought solitaire gizzard stones, swallowed for digestion, brought good luck. You eye its plump belly, then decide you're not that desperate. Joke's on you if you thought this bird was easy prey. It could bash skulls with that beak. You notice its tracks, weaving through the sand, each step deliberate. This bird wasn't just a loner, it shaped its island, spreading seeds and keeping forests lush. Historians can't agree on how much Rome's trade indirectly harmed it. Did early sailors bring rats or pigs that ate its eggs? You watch it strut, wings flapping like broken fans, and feel a twinge. It's no Sicilian dwarf elephant, but its quirky charm rivals that tiny trunk. The solitaire pauses, dropping a fruit pit, and you realize it's planting a forest Rome will never see. The sun dips, painting the cliffs gold, and the solitaire waddles off, unbothered by your presence. You're struck by its confidence, its total ignorance of the empires, Roman or otherwise, that'll unravel its world. You scramble down the cliff, the ocean's roar drowning your thoughts. This bird's a footnote in Rome's saga, but its loss stings. You turn west, back toward the empire's heart, where hoofbeats echo. Time to gallop. The tarpan's waiting, and it's wilder than you think. In a flash, you find yourself galloping across a windswept steppe in Dacia, 300 AD, the grass whipping your shins and the air sharp with the scent of earth and freedom. A herd thunders ahead, mane streaming like battle flags, tarpans, the wild horses that dance just beyond Rome's reach. One pauses, its dun coat gleaming, and snorts at you, daring you to keep up. This isn't some pampered chariot pony. The tarpan is raw, untamed, and as history shows, it's got no patience for Roman swagger. Good luck catching it. You're not exactly a centaur. The tarpan, Equus ferus, was a stocky horse, standing about 4.5 feet at the shoulder, with a thick neck and a coat built for harsh winters. It roamed Europe's plains, from Iberia to the Black Sea, long before Rome's legions marched. Romans coveted it for breeding cavalry mounts, but taming a tarpan was like wrestling a storm. Historical records, like those from Roman writer Oppian, describe wild horses in these regions, prized for speed but stubborn as stone. Overhunting and crossbreeding with domestic horses diluted its line, and by the early 20th century AD, the true tarpan was extinct, its last wild kin gone by 1918. Picture yourself as a Roman cavalry scout, your legion tasked with securing this frontier. You spot the tarpan herd, their hooves drumming like a war chant. You'd love to lasso one, but your rope's more decorative than functional. Here's a zany detail. Some Romans thought tarpan hair, woven into belts, boosted virility. You glance at the herd's flowing manes and decide to stick with your tunic. Jokes on anyone who tried shearing a horse that could outrun a chariot. You dismount, watching their leader, a stallion with a scarred flank, rear against the sky. Their hoofprints churn the soil, each step a reminder of their role. Tarpans grazed plains into mosaics, keeping forests at bay and feeding wolves with their stragglers. Historians still debate whether Rome's push for farmland shrank their range or if their genes just melted into domestic stock. Either way, every stable you pass is a tomb for their wildness. You try to edge closer, but the herd bolts, a blur of muscle and dust. The stallion glances back, eyes like polished flint, and you feel small. Rome's roads and forts can't cage this spirit, but they are closing in. You wonder if the tarpan knows its world's shrinking, or if it just runs, free for now. The herd vanishes over a ridge, leaving you with the wind's low hum. You remount, your horse tame by comparison, and turn north. A colder shore waits, where wings don't fly but dive. Keep your cloak tight, the great orc's calling, and it's got no time for hoofbits. Bundle up for this jump to a rocky beach in Britannia's far north, 350 AD, the wind will slice through your cloak like a gladius. As you arrive you see waves crash against jagged cliffs, and the air reeks of seaweed and salt. A splash draws your eye, a great orc, bobbing on the swell, its black and white feathers slick as polished armor. It dives, wings slicing water like oars, and resurfaces with a fish glinting in its beak. This flightless swimmer, no kin to penguins, rules these frigid seas, but Rome's northern push is tugging at its world. You shiver, this bird's tougher than you are. The great auk, Pinguinus impennis, was a seabird, standing about 3 feet tall, with a stout body and a beak sharp enough to crack shells. It thrived along North Atlantic coasts, from Britannia to Newfoundland, nesting in dense colonies. Romans expanding into these chilly fringes likely encountered it, as their legions built forts like Hadrian's Wall. Sailors' logs from later eras mention sea penguins, and Roman writer Aelian might have nodded at such oddities. Overharvesting for eggs, meat, and feathers drove it extinct by 1844 AD, but Rome's demand for fish and trade routes stirred the pot, bringing ships to its shores. Imagine you're a Roman quartermaster, tallying supplies for a coastal garrison. You spot orcs diving near your docked ship, their splashes taunting your empty nets. You're tempted to snag one. Those eggs are richer than Gaulish butter, but they are too quick. Here's an outlandish trivia question. What did some Roman sailors think orc feathers did? Answer: kept storms at bay if tucked in a cap. You tug your hood, smirking, and decide to trust your sails instead. Joke's on you if you thought out swimming this bird was an option. It's a submarine with feathers. You scramble closer, pebbles crunching, and spot its nest, a scrape in the rocks, cradling a single speckled egg. Great orcs shape these coasts, their guano fertilizing cliffs and feeding gulls with scraps. Historians can't agree on how much Rome's northern fisheries hurt them. Did cod hauls steal their prey, or was it just the start of a long decline? You watch the orc dive again, gone in a blink, and feel its rhythm, tied to tides, not empires. Bet it'd school the Rodriguez solitaire in a swim-off. The orc resurfaces, shaking water from its head, and you catch its gaze, steady, unbothered. It's no tarpan, galloping free, but its defiance is quieter, carved in every plunge. You wonder if it senses the ships multiplying, the nets tightening. The wind howls, and you pull your cloak tighter, the orc diving once more. Its world feels vast, but it's shrinking. You turn south, toward a distant shore, where another bird waits, stranger still. Time to sail far, the Moanelo's hiding, and it's got no quack to guide you. Our final animal lands in a place that might surprise you, a humid forest on a Hawaiian island. 400 AD, the air thick with the scent of crushed ferns and volcanic earth. Birdsong hums, but one sound stands out, a low, guttural honk, like a goose with a grudge. You part the leaves and spot it, a moanelo, a stocky duck-like bird, waddling through the undergrowth. Its beak, broad and tough, chomps a leaf, and its tiny wings twitch uselessly. This flightless oddity, tied to Rome's far-reaching trade web, feels like a secret the empire never quite uncovered. You're sweating. This bird's got home field advantage. The moanelo, likely a species like Calichelinican quassus, was a flightless waterfowl, standing about 2 feet tall, with strong legs and a beak built for grinding plants. Native to Hawaii, it evolved in isolation, far from Rome's borders, but the empire's trade routes to Asia indirectly brushed its world. Roman merchants sailing to India swapped tales of exotic birds, and though no legionary set foot here, their commerce rippled, seeding exploration that later reached these shores. The moanelo vanished by 1000 AD, likely from Polynesian settlers hunting and habitat changes, but Rome's global shadow faintly touched its fate. Picture yourself as a Roman trader, stranded after a shipwreck on a distant route. You stumble into this forest, spotting the moanelo nibbling ferns. It doesn't flee, just glares, its honk a warning to back off. You're tempted to grab it, those legs look roastable, but its beak snaps like a bear trap. Here's a quirky tidbit. Early islanders thought moanelo bones, carved into pendants, warded off bad dreams. You rub your eyes, wishing for a nap, but decide to skip the jewelry. Joke's on you if you thought this duck was an easy meal. It's got more grit than a Dacian tarpan. You notice its tracks, webbed but clumsy, carving paths through the mud. Moanelos shape these forests, grazing plants and spreading seeds, their droppings a fertilizer for volcanic soil. Historians still wonder how much Rome's trade spurred the voyages that doomed them. Did merchant maps inspire later sailors? You watch it waddle, its bulk swaying like a tipsy senator. It's no great orc, diving with grace, but its stubborn shuffle feels just as vital. Bet it'd give that Sardinian piker a run for toughest vegetarian. The moanelo honks again, vanishing into the ferns, and you're left with the forest's pulse. You imagine Rome's galleys, distant but relentless, pushing the world closer to this hidden place. The bird doesn't know it, but its time's ticking, caught in a web spun far beyond these trees. You wipe sweat from your brow, the humidity clinging like a second tunic. Time to head back to the empire's heart, where ruins hold the final echoes. Keep your sandals on, the ghosts of extinction are waiting, and they've got stories to whisper. On final stop tonight takes us to 450 AD, as we standing amid Rome's crumbling ruins, the once mighty city now a patchwork of shattered marble and overgrown vines. The Colosseum looms, its arches silent, no longer echoing the roars of Barbary lions or the trumpets of North African elephants. A breeze carries the scent of dust and wild thyme, and you feel the weight of time, heavy as a fallen column. You've tracked 15 extinct creatures across the empire's sprawl, from the Aurochs' thundering plains to the Moanelo's fern-choked forests. Now, you pause, reflecting on their ghosts, their stories etched in the bones of a world Rome reshaped but couldn't keep. These creatures weren't just beasts, They were threads in the empire's tapestry, each woven into its triumphs and tolls. The aurochs, gored for glory, fed Rome's hunger for conquest. The Caspian tiger, slinking through eastern shadows, dodged legionaries but not their roads. The Syrian wild ass carried Rome's burdens until its trails vanished. The Balearic shrew and Sardinian piker, small but fierce, scurried underfoot while empires rose and fell. Historical accounts, like Pliny's Natural History, hint at Rome's obsession with nature's wonders, yet its appetite, arenas, farms, fleets, chewed through their worlds. By the 20th century AD, all were gone, some lingering only in fossils or myths. Picture yourself wandering the Forum, now a haunt for stray dogs and weeds. You imagine the Barbary lion's roar, once a crowd pleaser, now a whisper in the wind. The Sicilian dwarf elephant's tiny trunk, the Rodriguez solitaire's clumsy waddle, their shadows here, their absence louder than Rome's cracked bells. Here's a zany detail. Some Romans believed animal bones, ground into dust, could predict the future. You kick a pebble, half wishing it held answers. Why did these creatures vanish? Overhunting, habitat loss, or Rome's relentless churn? Historians still debate, but the truth lies in the silence, each beast a casualty of empire's reach. You trace a finger along a weathered frieze, its carved beasts faded but defiant. The tarpans gallop, the great orcs dive, the European cave lions growl, they shaped lands Rome claimed, from steppes to seas. Joke's on Rome, no potion could save these creatures from its sprawl. You sit on a broken plinth, the city hushing around you. Their loss isn't just a story, it's a warning etched in the empire's cracks. As twilight falls, the ruins glow faintly, and you feel their presence, these forgotten souls, not gone but waiting, their echoes carried in every gust. You've walked their paths, felt their pulse. Now, it's time to rest, to let their stories settle like dust. The air grows softer now, the ruins fading into a gentle blur. You lean back, the stone cool against your skin, and let your breath slow, matching the rhythm of a distant tide. The aurochs' hoofbeats, the cave lion's growl, the piker's rustle, they weave into a quiet lullaby, their voices blending with the hum of night. You're safe here, wrapped in time's embrace, no need to chase shadows or dodge claws. Each creature you met, from the mighty Barbary lion to the humble Moanello, leaves a gift, a story, a whisper, a dream to carry you into sleep. The empire's gone, its beasts are ghosts, but their warmth lingers, like embers in a fading fire. Close your eyes, let the stars above Rome's hills guide you. The world is still, the fans hum a steady pulse. Drift now, softly, into the dark, where these lost souls watch over you. Sleep deep, traveler, until the next journey calls. As the ruins of Rome fade into the soft whispers of twilight, where the echoes of forgotten beasts like the aurochs and Moanello linger in the starlight, a new tale beckons. The empire's mortal creatures have shared their stories, but now the gods themselves stir, their divine dramas shaping the very earth. From the dusty plains and silent arenas, shift your gaze to the heavens and the underworld, where Ceres, Proserpina, and Pluto weave a myth that bound Rome's heart to the seasons. Settle in, dear listeners, for a story not of flesh and bone, but of divine will and eternal cycles, read from the ancient pages of Rome's sacred lore. Once, in the golden age of Rome, when the 7 hills bloomed with olive groves and the Tiber flowed like a silver thread, the goddess Ceres walked the earth. Her hair shimmered like ripe wheat, and her touch turned barren fields into seas of grain. Ceres, divine mother of agriculture, was the heartbeat of Rome's bounty. Farmers knelt at her altars, offering the first sheaf of every harvest, and her laughter filled the air with the scent of warm bread. Under her gaze, vineyards swelled, orchards bowed with fruit, and the granaries of Rome overflowed, feeding the empire's legions and its bustling streets. In the year 500 BC, as Rome's republic took root, Ceres' temples stood proud, their marble steps worn smooth by devotees' feet. She was no distant deity. Her festivals, like the Cerealia in April, saw citizens dance through fields, scattering seeds and singing hymns. Her power was life itself, the pulse of the soil that sustained a city dreaming of empire. Did you know? The word cereal traces back to Ceres' name, a nod to her eternal gift of grain. Without her, Rome's tables would have been bare, its ambitions starved. Ceres roamed the countryside, her chariot drawn by serpents, blessing every plough and sickle. She delighted in the labor of mortals, their sweat mingling with the earth she loved. Her greatest joy, though, was her daughter, Proserpina, a maiden whose beauty rivaled the dawn. Together, they wandered the plains, Ceres teaching Proserpina the secrets of growth, how to coax wheat from dust, how to make vines curl toward the sun. The fields of Rome, from Latium to Campania, glowed under their care, a tapestry of green and gold that fed the empire's heart. Yet, even gods cast shadows. While Ceres nurtured the earth, a darker gaze watched from below, hidden in the depths where light dared not tread. The fields flourished, but fate was stirring, and Ceres, for all her power, could not see the storm gathering beneath her feet. Her love for Proserpina, pure as a spring bloom, would soon be tested, and Rome's bounty would tremble in the balance. In the sun-drenched meadows of Sicily, where wildflowers swayed like a sea of stars, Proserpina danced with the grace of youth unbound. Her laughter rang clear, scattering butterflies and coaxing blooms to open. The daughter of Ceres, she was a vision, her eyes bright as dew, her robes woven with the hues of dawn. Sicily, Rome's fertile prize since its conquest in 264 BC, was her playground. She wove garlands of poppies and narcissus, her fingers nimble, her heart light, unaware of the eyes that watched from realms unseen. Proserpina's days were filled with joy, chasing nymphs through groves or resting by crystal springs. The island's bounty, from its wheat fields to its citrus trees, seemed to pulse with her presence, as if the earth itself adored her. She sang to the olive branches, and they bowed heavier with fruit. She skipped through vineyards, and the grapes swelled sweeter. The Sicilians, newly under Rome's yoke, revered her, whispering that their harvests doubled when she passed. By the way, Sicily was Rome's first province outside Italy, its grain vital to feeding the growing city. With her companions, the daughters of Oceanus, Proserpina roamed freely, her mother's lessons of growth ever in her heart. Ceres, busy tending Rome's far-flung fields, trusted Sicily's embrace to keep her daughter safe. The maiden gathered flowers by the shores of Lake Pegusa, its waters mirroring the sky, her voice a melody that hushed even the cicadas. She was the spark of spring, the promise of every seed, and her delight was the island's own. But beneath the earth, a shadow stirred. The meadows glowed, the flowers nodded, yet a chill crept unseen, a hunger born in darkness. Proserpina, lost in her dance, could not sense the gaze that fixed upon her, nor the will that would soon shatter her world. Sicily's light was hers for now, but the underworld's pull was patient, and its king was not one to be denied. Deep in the underworld, where shadows clung like damp cloaks and the river Styx whispered secrets, Pluto sat upon his ebony throne. The god of the dead, his eyes burned with a cold fire, his presence as unyielding as the stone around him. Ruler of souls, he was cloaked in darkness, yet his heart stirred with a longing no shade could sate. From his realm, he gazed upward, through the earth's crust, and saw Proserpina in Sicily's meadows, her radiance a beacon piercing his gloom. Her beauty, her light, ignited a desire to claim her as his queen. Pluto, stern and solitary, was no stranger to power. His domain held the spirits of Rome's fallen, from heroes to slaves, and his word bound them all. Historical fact side note: Romans revered Pluto as Plutus in some rites, linking him to wealth hidden in the earth, like gold and gems. But love was foreign to him, a spark he'd never known until Proserpina's laughter reached his ears. She was spring's promise, he the eternal night, and in her he saw a balance to his endless dark. He resolved to take her, heedless of the cost. In his chariot, drawn by 4 black steeds with manes of smoke, Pluto prepared to breach the upper world. The earth trembled faintly, a warning no mortal heeded, as he steered toward Sicily. His heart, if such a god could claim one, beat with purpose, but his will was iron. Proserpina, weaving her garlands by Lake Pagusa, knew nothing of the abyss stirring beneath her feet. The nymphs beside her sang, the sun blazed, but the ground held its breath. Pluto's gaze never wavered. He saw no meadow, no flowers, only her, a light to claim. The underworld's gates creaked open, and his chariot surged upward, the dark king ready to seize his bride. The earth, so generous under Ceres' touch, was about to betray her daughter, and the heavens watched in silence. The earth groaned, and Lake Pagusa's serene waters rippled as a chasm tore open in Sicily's meadows. From the rift surged Pluto, his black chariot thundering, steeds snorting plumes of shadow. Proserpina, her arms full of narcissus, froze as the dark god loomed. Her nymphs scattered, their screams swallowed by the wind, but Pluto's eyes fixed only on her. With a sweep of his iron arm, he seized the maiden, her garland tumbling to the grass. The chariot plunged back into the abyss, the ground sealing shut as if no crime had passed, leaving only silence and crushed flowers. Beneath the earth, Proserpina's cries echoed through caverns lit by ghostly flames. The underworld unfolded, vast, cold, with rivers of sorrow and fields of asphodel where shades drifted. Pluto, unmoved by her tears, drove onward to his palace of obsidian and bone. He spoke of queenship, of ruling beside him over the dead, but Proserpina's heart clung to the sunlit meadows above. Her mother's face, her laughter among the wheat, felt like a fading dream in this sunless realm. The abduction shook the divine order. Here's an interesting fact. Romans linked this myth to Sicily's volcanic activity, believing eruptions marked Pluto's comings and goings. Etna's fires, still active in Rome's day, were his forge, they said. Proserpina, now a captive in his halls, sat by a fountain of black water, her radiance dimming. Pluto offered jewels, emeralds, sapphires, but they were cold, unlike the warm earth she loved. She refused to speak, her silence a defiance stronger than any chain. Above, the meadow lay still, its flowers wilting as if mourning. No mortal saw the theft, no nymph dared return. Yet the earth itself seemed to whisper of loss, and far away, Ceres paused, a chill gripping her divine heart. The world above was about to learn the cost of a mother's grief, and Rome's fields would pay the price. In the fields of Latium, where golden wheat once swayed, Ceres wandered, her heart heavy with an unspoken dread. The goddess of agriculture, whose touch had nurtured Rome's bounty, now sensed a void where her daughter's laughter should have been. Proserpina was gone, and the meadows of Sicily offered no trace, only trampled flowers and a silence that screamed of loss. Ceres, her robes trailing like storm clouds, searched every grove, every stream, calling Proserpina's name until her voice cracked. The earth, her own domain, gave no answer. Her grief turned to fury, and the fields felt her wrath. Wheat withered, vines shriveled, and orchards dropped unripe fruit. Rome's granaries, once brimming, grew sparse, and farmers whispered of a curse. By the way, the Romans held annual rites called Sacra Cereres to honor Ceres, fasting and praying to avert such famines, especially in times of drought. Ceres, blind to their pleas, roamed from Etruria to Campania, her torch blazing in the night, a beacon of a mother's despair. Villages grew quiet, their hearths cold, as hunger crept into the empire's heart. She questioned every spirit, every nymph, but none had seen her daughter. The sun rose and set, yet Ceres found no rest, her divine strength fraying. The olive trees she passed turned grey, their leaves falling like tears. To mortals, she appeared as an old woman, cloaked in sorrow, begging for news of a lost girl. None could help, and her hope dwindled with each empty horizon. The goddess who fed Rome now starved it, her love for Proserpina stronger than her duty to the world. In the underworld, Proserpina sat silent, her eyes fixed on a world she could not reach. Above, Ceres' search grew desperate, her torch a fading spark. But one god, high in the heavens, had seen the truth, and his light would soon pierce the shadows of her grief. High above the earth, where clouds parted like a golden veil, Helios, the sun god, drove his blazing chariot across the sky. His eyes, bright as molten gold, missed nothing below, and he had witnessed Pluto's theft of Proserpina by Lake Pegusa. From his celestial ark, he saw Ceres wandering, her torch a flickering plea against the night, and her grief moved even his radiant heart. Helios, whose light touched every corner of Rome's empire, could no longer stay silent, for the fields he warned were dying under Ceres' sorrow. Descending to a barren hill in Latium, Helios found Ceres, her face etched with anguish. His voice, warm as summer, broke the silence, revealing the truth. Pluto had stolen Proserpina, dragging her to the underworld to be his queen. Ceres staggered, her torch falling, as the words seared her soul. The earth trembled faintly, mirroring her rage, for no mother, divine or mortal, could bear such a loss. Did you know? Romans revered Helios as Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun, especially in later empire years, with his cult peaking under Emperor Aurelian in 274 AD. Ceres' cries shook the heavens, her grief now armed with purpose. She turned her gaze to Olympus, where Jupiter, king of the gods, held court. If Pluto would not yield her daughter, she would demand justice from the skies. The fields, already wilting, grew brittle as she stormed away, her steps cracking the soil. Helios watched, his light dimming with pity, knowing the clash of gods would ripple through mortal lands. Rome's markets, once abundant, now rationed grain, and whispers of divine wrath spread among the people. In the underworld, Proserpina's silence held, her thoughts fixed on her mother's voice. Above, Ceres climbed toward Olympus, her heart a furnace of hope and fury. The sun rose again, but its warmth could not thaw the frost of a mother's loss, nor the hunger gripping Rome's heart. On the cloud-crowned peak of Olympus, where marble halls gleamed under an eternal sky, Jupiter sat enthroned, his eagle perched at his side. The king of gods, his beard like rolling thunder, listened as Ceres stormed into his court, her eyes blazing with a mother's fury. She demanded Proserpina's return, her voice shaking the heavens, accusing Pluto of theft and treachery. The other gods, Venus, Minerva, Apollo, watched in silence, their divine hearts torn between sympathy and dread, for Pluto's claim was no small matter, and the balance of realms hung in the balance. Jupiter, whose will shape the cosmos, knew the truth. Pluto, his brother, had taken Proserpina without consent, but love, even a dark god's, held weight. Yet Ceres' grief was a force as mighty as his own, and her famine starved Rome's mortal worshippers, whose prayers now faltered. Historical fact side note: Romans built the temple of Jupiter Optimus Maximus on the Capitoline Hill by 509 BC, making it the heart of their state religion, where such divine disputes were believed to shape their fate. Jupiter weighed the claims, Earth's bounty against the underworld's law, and sought a path to appease both. He summoned counsel, his voice like a storm's rumble, declaring that Proserpina's fate must be settled. Ceres stood firm, her hands clenched, vowing to let no seed sprout until her daughter walked free. Pluto, called from his shadowy realm, defended his act, claiming Proserpina as his rightful queen, her light destined to soften his dark. The gods murmured, divided, for love and justice clashed like tides. Jupiter, ever the arbiter, proposed a compromise, but first, he needed to know if Proserpina remained wholly of the upper world or if the underworld had claimed her. The halls of Olympus grew still, the gods awaiting Jupiter's decree. Ceres' gaze never left him, her hope a fragile flame. In the underworld, Proserpina waited, unaware that her fate hung on a divine bargain, and Rome's fields lay parched, yearning for resolution. Across Rome's once fertile plains, where the Tiber's banks had cradled abundant harvests, a grim shadow fell. Ceres, her heart bound to Proserpina's loss, unleashed her full wrath, halting the earth's pulse. Wheat fields turned to dust, vineyards withered into brittle skeletons, and olive groves stood barren, their fruits shriveled like stones. In the city, bread grew scarce, and markets echoed with the cries of hungry children. Farmers, their altars piled with desperate offerings, prayed to Ceres, but her ears were deaf, her will iron. The empire, mighty in conquest, trembled before a mother's grief. From Ostia to the hills of Etruria, famine gripped the land. Granaries, once Rome's pride, stood half empty, and the poor scavenged roots while the wealthy hoarded crumbs. Here's a trivia question winner. What festival did Romans hold to appease Ceres during crises? The Ambivalia, a spring rite where priests led processions to bless fields, though now even these seemed futile. Temples to Ceres, adorned with sheaves, saw crowds pleading for mercy, but the goddess wandered alone, her torch dim, her thoughts only of Proserpina. The year 400 BC marked such scarcity, as Roman annals later recalled, tying it to divine displeasure. In the countryside, livestock weakened, and rivers ran low, as if the earth itself mourned. Ceres' power, so long a gift, became a weapon, her love for her daughter outweighing mortal pleas. Senators debated omens, augurs read entrails, but no sacrifice could sway her. The people whispered of a stolen goddess, a tale spreading from Sicily's shores, and fear grew that the heavens themselves had turned against Rome. Jupiter's council on Olympus loomed large, its outcome their only hope. In the underworld, Proserpina sat silent, her hands folded, unaware of the hunger above. Ceres' famine tightened its grip, a mother's cry shaking the mortal world. The gods, watching from their starry thrones, knew time was short, and a messenger was needed to bridge the realms. In the heavens, where starlight wove a tapestry of eternal light, Jupiter summoned Mercury, the swift-footed messenger of the gods. His winged sandals gleamed, and his caduceus sparkled with divine authority. Jupiter's command was clear: descend to the underworld, find Pluto, and deliver the decree that Proserpina's fate must be resolved. Mercury bowed, his eyes sharp as a hawk's, and with a gust of wind, he soared downward, through clouds and earth, to the shadowy gates of Pluto's realm. The air grew cold, the light faded, and the Styx's mournful flow greeted him. Mercury entered the underworld's vast halls, where shades drifted like leaves on a forgotten stream. Pluto sat on his ebony throne, Proserpina at his side, her face pale but unyielding. Mercury's voice, clear as a bell, echoed through the cavern. Jupiter demanded Proserpina's return to the upper world, unless she had tasted the underworld's food, which would bind her forever to its depths. Pluto's eyes narrowed, but he nodded, his silence heavy with calculation. Here's an interesting fact. Romans worshipped Mercury as the god of trade and travel, with his temple near the Circus Maximus dedicated in 495 BC, reflecting his role as a divine courier. Proserpina listened, her heart stirring with hope of seeing her mother's fields again. Yet Pluto's gaze lingered on her, his desire unshaken. Mercury, sensing the tension, pressed for an answer. Had Proserpina eaten anything in this realm? The shades around them whispered, their voices a ghostly chorus, as Pluto's hand tightened on his scepter. The messenger stood firm, his wings twitching, ready to carry the response back to Olympus. The underworld's air grew thick, the moment poised like a blade. Above, Ceres waited, her torch barely flickering, unaware of the bargain unfolding below. Rome's fields lay desolate, its people praying for salvation. Mercury's mission held the key, but the underworld's secrets were not easily surrendered, and Proserpina's choice would tip the scales. In the underworld's dim halls, where torches cast flickering shadows on obsidian walls, Proserpina stood before Pluto and Mercury, her heart torn between hope and dread. The air was heavy, scented with the faint sweetness of forbidden fruit. Pluto, his voice smooth as polished stone, revealed a truth that chilled the cavern. Proserpina, in a moment of hunger, had eaten 6 pomegranate seeds from his garden, their ruby juice staining her lips. Each seed, a jewel of the underworld, bound her to its realm, a law even Jupiter could not undo. Proserpina's eyes widened, her memory flashing to the moment she plucked the fruit, unaware of its power. The seeds, small but potent, had tasted of earth and eternity, and now they tethered her to Pluto's side. Mercury, his winged sandals still, listened as Pluto declared her his queen, her fate sealed by the underworld's ancient rules. Yet Proserpina's silence spoke louder, her thoughts of Ceres and the sunlit fields unbroken. By the way, Romans saw pomegranates as symbols of fertility and death, often placed in tombs to honor the dead, a nod to this very myth. Mercury's caduceus gleamed as he prepared to ascend, carrying the news to Olympus. Proserpina's act, though unwitting, changed everything. Her return was no longer simple. Pluto's gaze softened, not with love but with triumph, for the seeds ensured her presence in his realm, if only in part. The shades around them stirred, their whispers like a distant tide, sensing a shift in the underworld's balance. Proserpina, her hands clasped, stood as a bridge between worlds, her heart still reaching for the light. Above, Ceres wandered, her grief a storm over Rome's barren fields. Mercury's wings beat upward, the weight of Proserpina's choice in his words. The gods awaited, and Jupiter's final ruling loomed, a decree that would shape the earth and its seasons for all time. On Olympus, where the air shimmered with divine light, Jupiter sat in judgment, his throne flanked by gods whose eyes followed Mercury's return. The messenger, his wings still humming from the underworld's chill, relayed the truth. Proserpina had eaten 6 pomegranate seeds, binding her to Pluto's realm. Ceres, her face a mask of anguish, pleaded for her daughter's full return, but Pluto's claim, backed by the seed's law, held firm. Jupiter, his gaze like a storm's edge, sought balance, for Rome's famine and Ceres' grief threatened the mortal world's faith in the gods. After deliberation, Jupiter spoke, his voice rolling like thunder, Proserpina would divide her year, 6 months with Ceres on Earth, 1 for each seed eaten, and 6 months as queen in the underworld with Pluto. Neither god could protest, for the decree was just, splitting Proserpina's light between life and death. Ceres' heart broke anew, but a flicker of hope remained. She would see her daughter again. Pluto bowed, his victory partial but secure, knowing Proserpina would return to his halls. Did you know? Romans marked this myth in the Thesmophoria, a women's festival honoring Ceres and Proserpina, held to ensure fertile harvests. The gods dispersed, their murmurs fading into the clouds. Mercury, his task complete, flew to the underworld to guide Proserpina upward for her first ascent. The shades below stirred, sensing their new queen's departure, while above, Rome's fields waited, brittle and silent, for the touch of divine reunion. Jupiter's bargain reshaped the cosmos, tying the Earth's rhythms to a mother's love and a daughter's divided fate. In the underworld, Proserpina prepared to rise, her robes trailing like twilight. Ceres, unaware of the decree, stood on a barren hill, her torch low. The world held its breath, poised for the moment when mother and daughter would meet, and Rome's bounty would stir once more. In a field near Rome, where the earth lay cracked and lifeless, Ceres stood, her eyes fixed on the horizon. The year was 400 BC, and the air held the weight of a world in waiting. Then, a soft tremor stirred the ground, and Proserpina emerged, guided by Mercury from the underworld's depths. Her face, pale from months in shadow, glowed with a quiet strength, and Ceres rushed forward, her arms wide. Mother and daughter embraced, their tears mingling like spring rain, and the fields around them stirred, green shoots piercing the soil as if summoned by their joy. Ceres' laughter, long silenced, rang out, and the earth responded. Wheat sprouted, vines curled upward, and olive trees bloomed, their petals drifting like snow. Rome's farmers, gaunt from famine, fell to their knees, offering thanks to the goddess whose love revived their land. Here's an interesting fact. Romans celebrated the return of Proserpina in spring festivals like the Cerealia, with games and offerings to ensure Ceres' favor. The city's granaries filled once more, and markets buzzed with the clink of coins and the scent of fresh bread. Proserpina, her robes woven with wildflowers, walked with her mother, her touch coaxing life from every furrow. Yet the joy was tempered, for the pomegranate's curse lingered. Proserpina knew she must return to Pluto for 6 months, her time above as fleeting as a bloom. Ceres, though grieving the coming separation, cherished each moment, teaching her daughter new secrets of the earth, how to strengthen roots, how to call the harvest. The people of Rome, unaware of the divine bargain, saw only the miracle of spring, their faith in Ceres renewed. As summer approached, Proserpina's steps grew heavy, the underworld's call tugging at her heart. Ceres held her close, the fields glowing in their shared light, but the shadow of parting loomed, and Rome's bounty would soon pause once more. In the underworld's vast halls, where the Styx flowed like a mournful hymn, Proserpina descended once more, her steps steady despite the darkness. The year was 400 BC, and the pomegranate's law bound her to Pluto's side for 6 months. No longer a captive, she took her place as queen, her throne beside his carved from jet and bone. Her presence softened the gloom, shades bowed, their whispers gentler, and the asphodel fields bloomed brighter under her gaze. Proserpina, once a maiden of meadows, now wielded power over the dead, her heart a bridge between light and shadow. Pluto, his stern face softened, watched her with a reverence few gods could claim. She judged souls with fairness, her voice calm but firm, guiding them to their eternal rest. The underworld, so long a place of dread, found balance in her rule, her warmth tempering its cold. Historical fact side note: Romans honored Proserpina in the Ludi Tarentini, games held every century to appease underworld gods, ensuring harmony between realms, as seen in records from 204 to 9 BC. Her reign brought order, even as she longed for her mother's fields and the sun's embrace. She walked the caverns, her robes trailing like twilight, tending ghostly gardens where pomegranates grew, their seeds a reminder of her dual fate. The shades, from fallen legionaries to forgotten poets, shared their tales, and Proserpina listened, her compassion a light in their endless night. Yet, her thoughts often drifted upward, to Ceres and the harvests she'd rejoin. The underworld's rhythm, slow and eternal, marked her days, but the promise of spring kept her spirit alive. Above, Rome's fields faded into autumn, the harvest gathered, and Ceres mourned quietly, her torch dim. Proserpina ruled below, her queenship a testament to her strength, but the earth awaited her return, its cycles tied to her divided heart. As autumn's golden hues faded into winter's gray, Rome's fields grew still, the earth resting under Ceres' watchful but subdued gaze. The myth of Proserpina's divided fate wove itself into the city's heart, explaining the seasons that shaped its life. In spring and summer, when Proserpina walked with her mother, the land burst with wheat, figs, and grapes, feeding Rome's legions and its bustling forums. In autumn and winter, as she reigned in the underworld, the fields lay fallow, the trees bare, mirroring Ceres' quiet longing. This cycle, born of divine compromise, became Rome's rhythm, its people attuned to the gods' eternal dance. Farmers marked their calendars by this tale, sowing seeds when Proserpina returned and harvesting before her descent. Temples to Ceres and Proserpina, adorned with sheaves and flowers, drew crowds offering prayers for bounty. Here's a trivia question winner. What Roman month was named for the harvest peak, linked to Ceres? August, from Augustus, whose reign saw grand festivals for her. By 200 BC, Rome's annals noted these rites as vital, tying the city's prosperity to the myth's truth. The story was no mere fable, it was the pulse of the land, a sacred explanation for why the earth slept and woke. In villages, mothers told their daughters of Proserpina, a goddess who endured loss yet brought life. The tale shaped Rome's reverence for nature, urging respect for the soil that fed its empire. Even in the city's marble heart, where senators debated and merchants haggled, the season's turn reminded all of divine will. The myth bound mortal and immortal, earth and underworld, in a balance as delicate as a seed on the wind. Proserpina's dual reign continued, her light shared between realms. Rome thrived on this cycle, its people unaware that their harvests sang of a mother's love and a daughter's sacrifice, forever etched in the turning year. Through the centuries, as Rome's 7 hills cradled empires and ruins alike, the tale of Ceres and Proserpina endured, a thread in the tapestry of mortal faith. The seasons turned like a sacred wheel, spring's bloom, summer's bounty, autumn's harvest, winter's rest, all woven into the story of a mother's love and a daughter's dual reign. In the fields, farmers sowed and reaped, their prayers to Ceres rising with the dawn, while in temples, priestesses lit torches for Proserpina, honoring her light in both earth and underworld. The myth was Rome's heartbeat, its explanation for the earth's eternal rhythm. From the Republic's rise in 509 BC to the empire's twilight, the story shaped rituals and hearts. Festivals like the Cerealia and Thesmophoria filled Rome's streets with song, binding the city to its divine roots. The tale taught reverence for the soil, a lesson etched in every furrow and sheaf. Even as Rome's marble crumbled, the myth lived on, whispered by peasants and poets, a reminder that love, even divine, could shift the cosmos. Here's an interesting fact. Romans carved Proserpina's image on sarcophagi, symbolizing life cycle, a nod to her journey between worlds, seen in art from 200 AD. The gods' bargain held, Proserpina forever split between Ceres' fields and Pluto's halls, her story a balance of joy and sorrow. Rome's people, from senators to shepherds, lived by her seasons, their lives entwined with her fate. The myth was no mere legend, it was the earth's own voice, singing of loss, reunion, and the promise of renewal. Now, as the tale settles like dust on ancient stones, let the world grow soft and still. Picture Rome's fields, golden under a gentle sun, where Ceres' laughter hums through swaying wheat, and Proserpina's footsteps linger in the dew. The gods rest, their strife faded, their love a quiet glow that cradles the earth. Feel the season's rhythm, slow and steady, like a lullaby sung by the wind. No need to chase the harvest or fear the dark. Both are part of the cycle, as sure as your breath. The fan hums low, the night wraps you close, and the stars above whisper of spring's return. Drift now, dear traveler, into a sleep as deep as the underworld's peace, as warm as Ceres' embrace. Don't move a muscle, just listen to the peaceful campfire, as you rest well, until the dawn calls you back.